Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Women on Top podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and with over 15 years of business experience, I became truly passionate about finding ways to support and hear from way more women. And what we know to be true is that women thrive when they are in their favorite position, on top in business, in relationships, in personal growth, and on top in being real and authentic to who the hell they are. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy the Women on Top podcast. Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Women on Top. It's not going to be an interview. This is another solo episode, and it's kind of more of a confession, but also a really important lesson that I learned that I think is a life lesson that you can take away from this as well. So I'm going to tell you about a little story about a moment that at the time kind of felt small, but actually like handed me, again, like one of those lessons that I feel like I'm not going to forget and that I'm going to carry with me and that I am going to implement differently as I move forward. And so this is a little bit about, well, this is all about pushing through. Like when something that we're kind of told that when we push through, like that's a good thing. That's grit. That's resistance. That's showing strength. And I don't think, and now I've been shown that pushing through is not always the answer. And so I had the realization recently, like, what if it's actually the opposite? What if that pushing through, that force, that, you know, the thing that we're trying to force, what if that is actually just fear in disguise? And for me, it was. So let me just set the stage. I had an interview the other day that, you know, was lined up and I was excited for, and it, you know, the day was pretty aligned. Like I have this new mic, which was working well. My little podcasting nook is like all set up and ready. My coffee is ready. I had even gone through the process the night before of cleaning off my computer in terms of storage. Like I went through and like backed up a bunch of files and deleted stuff and just really had things ready and set for the week because I had a big podcasting week. I was interviewing multiple people this week. So we get on, she's great. Like we hit record and 3 minutes into our conversation that was already really like personable. She was a good speaker. 3 minutes in, I get this error message that says something to the effect, I've never seen it before. It's on my podcast recording software. It's totally new to me. It says something to the effect of like local disk storage is full, some error. And I was like, I don't know what this means. I also knew that I had just made space the night before on my computer. And when I got that error message, I had to click OK. And at that point, the recording stopped. I was like, okay. And so here's kind of where the story really starts. Because instead of stopping in that moment and troubleshooting, instead of like saying to my guest, hey, hold on, like, let me figure this out, I decided to push through. So I'm like, okay, that happened once, like maybe I'll hit record and something will reset and it'll be fine. So she's still talking, like she must, I couldn't tell if she noticed or not, honestly. And so you kind of learn, especially in facilitation too, like if you're ever facilitating a class or a course, you want to avoid stopping if you can. And often like if there's distractions or things going on, you have to just carry through. So I was like, you know what, we're going to carry through. So I hit record again. Same thing happens 3 minutes later. We're talking, having this great conversation, same error message. Stop. It stops. It gives me the error message. I have to click OK and I have to start recording again. And so I did it again. And I'm just, you know, I'm like distracted at that point because I'm looking around on my computer. I'm checking through the software to see if there's like any settings that I'm missing. There's any other like cache that I can clear on my browser, even though I'd already done that. I'm deleting even more stuff in the frenzy and also trying to keep the conversation alive because the podcast is still happening. So this becomes the rhythm of the entire conversation. I keep getting the error message, and every 3 minutes, my heart is just kind of like, and, you know, panicking a little bit. And I'm just continuing to click record. I'm like, you know what? We are in it. She is here. And my guest, like, fortunately, was just incredible. She's she's talking, she's smooth, she's confident, she seems hardly phased. And, again, I'm like trying to pretend that I'm calm while inside myself, I'm just thinking to myself, what is going on? What is happening? And at one point, I even confessed during our conversation, I was like, gosh, I'm getting this weird error, but I'm just going to keep going and keep recording. And she was like, yeah, sounds good. So let me just pause for a moment, because this sentence is like just saying, like, I'm just going to keep pushing through. That's really kind of where the ego is starting to show up. That's like the part of me that really doesn't want to look unprofessional, that's very worried about what my guest must be thinking. That's the part of me that thought that my job was to make this experience just seamless at all costs. And let's be real, it wasn't seamless. She actually was having, and I didn't know this, but she was having to click okay every 3 minutes on her end every time that error message would pop up. So I ended up being distracted, not fully present, not fully enjoying that conversation. And all the while, I was piling on hours of editing work that, I kind of knew was going to happen. I was like, gosh, there's going to be these 3-minute clips now for about the like 45 minutes to an hour that we're recording. And that's so many clips. If you know anything about editing audio and video, that's just a headache. That is not what you want to have happen. And so, yeah, as we wrap up, she, I asked her about it. It's like, gosh, I'm getting this weird error, but like all good. And she said, yeah, I noticed, and it kept popping up for me too. And that kind of cued my like, I should have done this differently. Actually, at first, I was just really annoyed. It's like, oh my gosh, why was this happening with the software? So we say goodbye, and I'm just like furiously writing to, the podcast platform support team. I'm just like submitting tickets. I'm like chatting with their chat bots, whatever. I'm just frustrated because I'm literally looking on my computer. I'm like, what else could I have deleted? Like, is there really not space? There's plenty of space. I'm like, I feel like I'm totally fine. So about an hour later, and I'm talking with ChatGPT, of course, because I'm like, what could have gone wrong? And it is basically reassuring me that I've taken all the steps right. And it's like, this is on your podcast software at this point. This is not you. So about an hour later, I finally get a message from the software company saying, we experienced a technical issue on our end, but now it's resolved and everything should be working fine. Which is like, you just have to laugh at like the whole thing, because you're like, oh, cool, great. Like, I am so glad that it's now resolved after I pushed through that and now have a mountain of editing to do. And, at the time I was worried because I had podcasts the next day and the next day. And I was like, gosh, if this doesn't work, and if it's something going on that is like ongoing, I need to find another software. So I'm glad it wasn't that, but just the fact of like, oh, sorry, we experienced a technical issue, just felt so small. It was like, okay, you don't realize what I just went through. But after all of that, and, I like vent to a friend and I go for a walk and I come back and I'm like, you know what? Why didn't I stop? Why didn't I pause? Why didn't I take control and say, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry to do this, but we're at error number 2 or 3. Something is wrong. And I'm sorry to do this, but like, let's log out and let's try to log back in. And if it keeps happening, unfortunately, like we might have to reschedule. And that's how I should have handled it. Like, that is how I wish I would have handled it. The truth was that I just kept pushing, and I thought that was the right thing to do. Like, oh, I want to make sure that she has a good experience, and this is all about her, and I'll just deal with all the editing on my end because I'll just be a martyr. And I thought it was protecting my guest's time. I thought that was like going to make me look more professional somehow. But that pushing and that forcing didn't protect anybody. It robbed both of us of being fully present for the conversation. And to be honest, you're not even going to notice, and I'm not going to tell you who it was, because she's amazing and she speaks, and she, you won't realize that we're distracted. But that just taught me such a huge lesson. And I feel like the heart of it is often we are glamorizing pushing through. We call it grit. We say it's resilience. we say to ourselves, or I think we mask it with being like a good leader if you can just push through. But often that pushing is out of fear. And it's fear of looking unprepared. For me, for sure, it's fear of looking unprepared. For me, it's fear of disrupting somebody else's comfort, God forbid. For me, it's the fear of them witnessing that I don't have it all together. And especially when it's something that is dear to your heart, like this podcast, that feels really vulnerable for somebody else to allow them to witness that. But truly, like presence and real leadership actually means knowing when to pause. Good leaders know when to just stop forcing and start being strategic and take that moment to think about whether it's time to shift or figure out what the resolution is before you just keep moving forward and have to potentially redo it all. And my guest, although she didn't admit it, she was super kind and she even offered like we could always re-record it. She was experiencing something on her end too because she had to keep clicking this button, this error message. And even though she might not have been able to fully sense my distraction, like I robbed myself again of like being really in the moment. And I love having those conversations. And I wish I would have just had a little more fun with it. And I would have been able to do that had I taken control. And I think, it's so often the case that we stay in the job that isn't fitting us because stopping or pausing or pivoting feels like failure. And we push through things like relationships that aren't working because pausing or questioning feels scarier than pretending. We often force ourselves into a hobby or an identity that we think we should love. I've talked to people who are like trying to force themselves to like running or some sort of physical activity that they just don't love, when deep down, maybe it's not ours to love. I think that pushing through sometimes masks itself as strength, but ultimately it can really just be ego. And oftentimes the braver choice and the stronger choice is saying, let's stop and let's reset. So listen, I've got a mess of editing I've got to go do now. I learned this lesson the hard way, and I've learned it a couple of times. I had some technical issues several months ago, and I was also noticing how in that moment I should have stopped and paused way sooner than I did. But the nice thing about this moment for me and learning this is that when I walked away, I actually am feeling strangely more empowered because I experienced this. I feel like knowing this now, I feel a different level of strength because ultimately also this is my podcast. This is my space. This is my life. And if something's not working, I get to stop. I get to breathe. I get to realign. And that's not weakness. That's me being in my leadership. And maybe the same is true for you. Maybe the thing that you've been pushing through right now, whatever that is in your life, whether it's at work or at home or even within yourself, sometimes I have these self-beliefs of I should be more social or I should be whatever. Maybe you don't need to force that anymore. Maybe you just need a pause. Because when you do take time to pause, you actually make space for clarity. You make space for presence. You make space for calm. You make space for the version of you that isn't scrambled and frazzled, but is leading. And so my encouragement for you today is to not mistake ego for strength. Don't confuse pushing through with moving forward. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can all do is to just stop. So thank you for being here with me. And if this resonated, would you do me a favor and just share this episode with somebody who might need the reminder, or maybe with somebody who has like forced their way through something and now they have 18 or more clips that they have to go edit? And regardless, I just want you to know that I'm here with you and I appreciate you and I see you. And I will see you the next time on the Women on Top podcast. Until then. Thank you for tuning into the show today. And before you go, I just have one quick favor to ask of you. There is a really simple way that you can help support me and help support this show, and that is to hit that follow button on whatever app you're listening to the show on. I'm trying really hard to level up the content and deliver unique value and amazing guests, and just hitting that follow button is the magic that will help continue to empower that. And remember that the world deserves to hear your voice and your stories, and you deserve a place at the top.